My name is Francisca Benítez.
Hi, my name is Edra Soto.
My name is Miguel Luciano.
I'm Jesus Papoleto Meléndez, and I came here to play dominoes.
I don't know.
Mira, pero yo es que, Papoleto, ¿cuál es tu experiencia con domino, el juego de domino puertorriqueño?
Pues yo soy del barrio, de la 111.
Ajá.
I love my block and la 111. Ahora Viverito vive mi bloque hoy. But anyway, cuando yo era chiquito, there's the barber shop, and there's dominoes, and there's the beauty parlor. In the summertime, they sell what do you call that? Sugar cane.
Uh-huh.
So we would buy sugar cane, and then we peel the sides of it off, and we make little strips. And then we go get straight pins, like when you buy a shirt, where you pull the pins out, and we knock off the little heads, and we embed them into these things, and then we climb on the roof over the cantilever, like over there, and we'd hang over the cantilever and drop them on the men playing dominoes below.
So you were taunting the domino play.
They land on the board like that, and they get mad at us.
Wow.
They came down like that. We got 7, right? Oh, okay.
I like the idea of you see this table itself is a model that was inspired by a table that you will find at a plaza in Puerto Rico. The first time I saw this design was in a plaza in Puerto Rico, a public plaza, and then I thought, that looked like, mid-modern century art, and if you make it with beautiful wood, maybe that would ignite a conversation. And then now the opportunity of doing this in a public park is like undeniable. I'm like, oh my God, we need to have tables.
Grounded in our ancestors. My connection to domino comes from New York City.
Did you make this?
Yeah, I made this in 2008.
Oh.
It's a little, it's a painting about the king of the domino table where I started getting acquainted with domino. I used to work as a teaching artist in a community center of the New York City Housing Authority. I worked for like 13 years as a teaching artist in many community centers in public housing in the city.
Okay.
And in several of these community centers, especially in senior centers, we had art and there was always a domino table going. And it wasn't just men here, there were women who played too, but it was definitely elders. And some of them would come to do art with us and then we'll go back to the domino table. And he was so elegant. He had a hat, always with a suit. And he was very famous, and he had a limp and a prosthetic leg, and he was very famous because he had survived falling off a building on Hooper Street and South First Street over there in South Williamsburg, where I used to live. He survived.
Wow.
How you survived that?
Nobody knows, but he had like this prosthetic leg, and he was the king of domino and the expert in math. So he was always
the
notation, and he keeps everything going smooth.
¿Cuál era su nombre?
Don Jose. So he passed away in 2015. I wrote it here down, but this painting is when he told me his story about him falling. So I wanted to bring an elder because if I didn't grow up with domino in Chile. Actually, my family started playing in the last 20 years another game of cheap tiles like this, which is called Rumino Cube. Rumino Cube, which comes from another one. But
I mean, you see dominoes in the barrio still. I mean, it's like it's just like a fiction. In summertime, especially. 106, you name it. There's like regular tables, regular players. So it's so ingrained in sort of the landscape of el barrio.
I want to move now to the game in public space, and I want to talk a little bit first with Miguel Luciano. Maybe thinking about how the possibility of game is so important in a city. What does it do to social life? And first thinking about you playing basketball courts, I know, the place where it's delimited that here is where you play. Designated areas of play that have embedded rules that are easily graspable, okay? Like, oh,
Yeah,
I put the
yeah.
thing in the hoop, and that's how people. So they
Yeah.
have like places for designated, and then we have this informal game, and the political potentials of informal game, or playing where you figure it out, and where it's not expected that you play there, but you go and play anywhere. And dominoes is like that. You bring
Yeah.
out the table and chair and take a piece of the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And what does that do to the life of the city? And also another gender aspect of, for example, walking alone in a dark street as a woman. So many times in my life in New York, I'm kind of like nervous and a little afraid, and I see like a table over there, a little light and life, and there's a domino table, and you're like, I'm safe. Right? It's like a lantern. It's like this
But
this
you
social life
recognize
is
it,
life. So you recognize
it
it.
makes
So
you feel safe.
let's talk
maybe the
about
memory of it.
maybe these games in public space and ludic activities. What does it do to democracy, to the city, to us, society?
I have like a whole series of projects that are interactive sculptures that are essentially about play, right? From kiddie rides to vending machines, to all kinds of interactive games, and then the piragua cart, also the bikes, right? The bike sculptures are essentially about play, and they tap into sort of like childhood memory, and it's all about that. It's all about that. So it brings us back, to that space. The piragua cart, Pin My Piragua is a project that's been around a lot of different neighborhoods, but I always think of it as a project that reflects the culture of our community, and it returns to that community, like to the community that inspired it. That's where it comes to life in the best way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was made for that. It was made to return to the people who it inspired that work to begin with. It goes into museums, it goes into other spaces, and it's a show bike, or it's another kind of experience for other audiences. But for me, like my favorite part of it is when it is in our community and it doesn't need a translation, doesn't need an explanation. It's activated by the culture that's already there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's my favorite, part of that. And so, and that I mean, I like that this kind of a project can happen similarly, like within the spaces of community, right? That it doesn't need a translation. Like people who are players are going to walk by this table and know exactly what it's for.
Yeah.
They know that it's not a lunch table.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but also, but they can use it as they need to.
Yeah.
That was one thing that I like about the design, that it's not really specifying like this is for domino, and that's one thing also that, the public art fund, they will ask about the domino tables, and I say, but remember, this is not only for domino. They will be used the way people need to use them. And I think the domino comes from, and maybe even an assumption, that I'm Puerto Rican, that this is like a, an instigation that will, maybe there's a nostalgia connection of the fences that bring to the nostalgia of playing or getting together and playing a game, so like activating the history of, this particular game. And we have been telling all kinds of memories, so there's a big nostalgia that is tied to the juego, the game of domino, and places. And
But for a minute, like, you can forget that. I mean, that's what the potential of, I think, a project like this is, that for a minute you can forget where you are, right? Like, we can talk about El Barrio, we talk about Puerto Rico, we talk about all these associations in the shadow of these verjas,
Definitely,
and
that's a hope as an artist.
Yeah.
That is the hope we have, that you can have people travel in their minds, in places. I keep seeing the palomas and thinking about San Juan, and and I see them here, I start bringing food.
I think that the activation of this space is so important, right? That we're literally sitting like in the shadow of the Plaza Hotel, like literally, right, as the sun goes down.
I love you say wait.
So which could not be more like separate or sort of or opposite these associations. You know what I mean? And so it's like, for me, the thing that I like about this potential is that, depending on who's here, right, you can redefine the space itself, right? The way we redefine the city in different moments, right? By not just like reclaiming the space, but also by activating it with our associations. And you give us an architecture through which to do that, right? So that we can reimagine ourselves in our own kind of space.
This architecture have a particular association to working class communities in Puerto Rico. I grew up in a lower middle class community that was gated and that have houses that were built during the 50s and the 60s. And as an adult, was only as an adult leaving Puerto Rico, and then in coming back to Puerto Rico, the constant traveling back to Puerto Rico start igniting my reflection on, is there a significance to this particular motifs that live in the residences of middle class working class Puerto Rican? Is there a meaning to this? And like seeing myself as like lower middle class person that grew up there was a big part on being able to do something like this, because I want to think about the cultural value of these elements, and I want people to feel and sense their value. And I thought, what an opportunity for me to create a project right here in the middle of affluent New York that is also like, like the plaza of the immigrants, this is everybody's here, just making a living.
There are games that are open to everyone, right? And then there are games of like a tight-knit group of men and the interesting thing about that dynamic is that when you have a group like that, like these guys been playing dominoes forever, this guy is the champ and this guy is his enemy and blah, friendly but the conversations that they can then engage in could be more personal, problem solving even. Talk about their families, divorces, financial issues, get more social and personal with people. But then you need that close knit. But still, nevertheless, that aside, with that specialized group that love each other and won't let even women, break their seal, you can still have that anywhere there's a game. You know what I mean? And even if they're strangers, you could still get into deep conversations.
Edra, tell us a little bit more the significance specifically of building this in Central Park, perhaps here in Freedman Plaza, which is, she was a champion of public art, a whole lineage of people devoted to that. So what is the significance here in between nature and concrete, and particular here, Seneca Village there, everything that means here, as you said, Plaza Hotel there.
But this project is about, like imagining attributes of the working class homes and literal transplant, like it's imaginary because this is our representation, but it's a representation of something that exists. So I also didn't want to distract by creating something that is an alternative of what exists. It's so utilized, like the association of Puerto Rico with military architecture, Spanish military architecture. So I thought it's a more accurate symbol of Puerto Rican pride to me than a garita, than a Spanish fort. A military Spanish fort. So I'm trying to integrate this in this space. It's an affluent site that we know, and I'm just trying to integrate it so it doesn't feel like out of place. And that's the thing about this architecture, this residential architecture, that it does have in my opinion, does have the potential to exist here without a question. Like nobody questions, this feels so out of place. I don't know, maybe, but I don't feel it. So I just went with it.
I mean, you create I think of this as a wall, right? But also as a screen, right? I think that with this kind of a structure, I've always thought about this with your work too, is that it's also about protection. I mean, they're made for protection, right? In the home, in the patio and all that stuff, like that's why people put them up. But in your work, I think of them also as a protection of us in a way, culturally speaking, right? And so the bars become symbolic, at least that's the way I like to think about them. And so who is protected in this space, right? And as you kind of like take a piece of Puerto Rican architecture and put it here, right, it also sort of asks the question, right, about our protection, right, and how our culture, how our island, etc., is protected or unprotected, right? How it's both protected and vulnerable. So there's a question of vulnerability, right? It's also, you know, in the work and in the space itself. And you can feel that, especially here, where we're talking about these things again in a place where, like, you know, we're not the center. You know, we are right now, right? And so and drawing attention to that, I think is a really powerful part of your work.
Any life lessons that you learn in a domino table, Papoleto?
Any like that.
Well, you learn not to mess around with old men.
Yeah.
They're serious with their dominoes.
Bring your dollars.
Well, it's a space you have to be invited into.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
but what is up with that? What is up with the exclusivity, or like, it's like more like a, how do you say, like a monopolizing the game, like, oh, it's our thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, because
Maybe.
with somebody's table, right? I mean, in a public table, you know, like you can create your own traditions, right? But you know, most of the time the tables are somebody's putting up the table, and they've got the game, they've got the players, you know what I mean? And then the crowd forms to watch, you know, right? And then the conversations around the table happen, and it's just part of the block. It's just part of the block. But this is a little bit different, right? You know, you can invite anybody to play here, or people can come and kind of create their own tradition.
Yeah. As an artist, I always say I'm not making this only for one kind of people or community, you know, like I want everybody to be a part of it. I want to welcome everybody to feel welcome. The gesture of Graft intends to, you know, give me an opportunity to experiment with the idea of inhabiting a space using this language, and I call it Graft because I think of it in terms of my skin, how do I integrate myself. I'm a poetic thing, I integrate myself into any place that I stand in the United States. Like, how do I integrate myself in a way that it is not necessarily disrupting, but at the same time it is. You know, like I mean, it's not that I haven't made my decision. I think that is the way that this particular type of architecture behaves.
It also brings to mind, like, as you sort of like take a piece of Puerto Rican architecture and insert it in the city, the question of occupying space at a time where our spaces are being occupied in reverse through gentrification, both on the island and here, right? Our communities here are experiencing it like aggressively, pero también en Puerto Rico, en la isla también. So for me, it also it puts us, you know, puts us in that conversation.
For sure.
In so much as we, as a community, then have this opportunity to occupy other spaces, right? Potentially, that there's another political dimension of the work that can be active in that regard, but that also can draw attention potentially to what's happening on the island. And I think that's an important thing to be in the conversation. You know? As we think about a piece of Puerto Rico here in New York, it's like everybody's trying to get a piece of Puerto Rico right now there.
That's what I was talking earlier about the cultural value, because if we think about this in terms of cultural value, then our narrative start becoming challenged. You know, like we have a kind of narrative that people have bought. This is we, you know, like of who we are, what we are, how others create a representation of ourselves. And then I like, where is our take on that? So this is my take. This is my take. Like, how do I want people to think about cultural value.
Working class histories, working class homes, you know, most of us come from those places, you know, and most of us recognize this kind of a patio, this kind of an interior in that way. But all of that is in jeopardy in Puerto Rico right now, as people are trying to hold on to their homes. And I mean, that's a real thing.
It is really
for,
sad.
For working class people on the island.
There's so many of these patterns. So public art is a community effort, you know, 100%. I could never do this by myself. I think nobody can do public art by themselves. It's just it's the city, you know, the community, the people, the artists. You know, it's all these people. Everything come together. An investment, you know, an investment too. And somebody's investing in your idea, in your vision. It's a privilege. I will never take that for granted as well. That the privilege of providing a vision, you know, an alternative.
Who's playing
Pero
now?
¿quién
I
va
already
ahora?
played, I put that.
You played the one.
Yo puse esta. ¿Tú pusiste esta? Espérate, eso es